welcome to the Inner Circle Boardroom's Backstage Pass. If this is your first time here, a big and warm welcome to you. My name is Kay Chohan. This is the platform where you'll find me in discussion with investors and boards. I'll be unpicking their views and approach to shifting operating models, turnarounds and scaling businesses. I'll also bring you the latest thinking into market gap opportunities, investment strategies. So today I'm speaking with Enrique. Enrique is Liberty Global Executive Vice President and CTO. He has over 25 years experience working at high-tech Fortune 5 companies, including AT&T, Cisco, and Microsoft. Enrique, I've been looking forward to our conversation today. What I'd like to do is understand some of the gaps and opportunities that you see in the media telco space right now. I'd also like to understand, obviously what we know is that there's been a global impact with the pandemic, which has put a great emphasis on remote working and also the network infrastructure and capabilities. So what I'd like to uncover here today is the impact and implications for investors and operators alike. So firstly, just tell us, those watching this interview and they're not quite sure in terms of how telecommunication companies operate, can you just talk us through how that actual operating model is set up? Who actually owns the network infrastructure, for example?
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to spend a little time. And a very kind introduction. You said I was 25 years in the industry. I'm a lot older than that, unfortunately, so we'll leave it at your number. Let's see, telecom industry. Well, I mean, I guess for today's conversation, we'll focus in Europe, which is mainly where we operate. Even though I'm sitting here in sunny United States, telecom industry is first of all, it's a 100+ year industry that has gone through so many transformations. In most countries, it still does, or it has a close legacy with government regulated and government operated businesses, because telecommunications is considered an essential service in most places around the world. Although the industry has evolved enough where there's really very few telecom operators, that are still owned, if you will, by the government. Although again, there's a very close link. In general, the bigger groups, groups like Liberty Global, Vodafone, Telefonica, and others in Europe have been created through a number of acquisitions. This is a highly acquisitive industry because the economies of scale are real. If you operate a network, you are much better off operating a network with twice as many subscribers or twice as many mobile phone users or whatever your kind of network is than a smaller one. And because of that, the industry has evolved significantly through acquisitions. Ourselves, we probably are the most active player in the industry with respect to acquisitions. I mean, if I just look at this crazy 2020 Corona year, we've gone through two major transactions. We announced the plan to have a joint venture between our Virgin Media business in the UK, mostly a fixed broadband business, and the O2 mobile business owned by Telefonica. Will become a 50-50 joint venture sometime next year. It's going through regulatory approval, and we not only announced but actually closed the acquisition of Sunrise in Switzerland, where we took one of the market leading mobile operators and putting it together now with our market leading fixed broadband. So the reason I mentioned that is because the industry as a whole has a big legacy of these acquisitions, and because of that, it's really difficult to talk about a single operating model in the industry. Although generally, what you have is some level of vertical integration. You have a company like ourselves that own the infrastructure. We're present in 7 countries in Europe, and in most cases we own the infrastructure, we own the actual networks, and then of course we own the brands that we provide as a service on top of that. So you're sitting in the UK, you're a Virgin Media customer. Most likely you're operating on infrastructure that we own and operate kind of on a daily basis. In other cases, so for example, if you're a Virgin Mobile customer in the UK, we operate that through an MVNO agreement. So basically, we are the service provider, in this particular case, riding on somebody else's infrastructure. And typically, the industry runs as a mix of that. For the most part, the more successful operators, it's not a exclusive situation, but for the most part, the more successful operators have either majority or full ownership of their infrastructure, because it's an industry again that where the economics of owning your networks are very, very favorable.
Two major acquisitions you guys have just done this year. Were those acquisitions pre-COVID? I suspect they were already in conversation, or were they after the impact of COVID? It made sense to collaborate, which is a lot of what a lot of businesses we're starting to see more of.
So those acquisitions would have happened, those transactions would have happened with or without COVID. In the case of the UK, we had, kind of started the conversation before COVID hit, but really all of the transaction was basically done under COVID. The case of the Switzerland transaction, we actually started and finished within COVID. So I don't think COVID has impacted in a very dramatic way the M&A landscape for telcos. Okay, for other parts of the industry, absolutely, but for telcos and mobile companies, I think we would have been just as active if COVID hadn't happened. For our industry, COVID has been a bit of a mixed blessing. As a whole, I think it has been neutral. As a whole, it has certainly increased the consumer's view of the importance of telecommunications. I mean, you're working from home. Obviously, you could not be doing what you're doing right now without the help of broadband networks, and that's the case now for most people, where that was not the case before COVID. So there's a higher recognition of the importance of the services and the industry, but at the same time, there's higher competition for it. So even though you could argue, it's a friendlier environment to operate because people are eager to have fantastic broadband, fantastic mobile service, fantastic voice service, competition is equally, it has cranked it up as well, right? So net is kind of been neutral, but specifically for those transactions, I think that would have happened with or without COVID.
I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but with some of those acquisitions that you've done, what is the long-term strategic thinking around that? I mean, was one of them actually around the whole 5G conversation? Was it because they'd already had that partnership, or you would piggyback on the back of them because it's easier to do that than it is to start building your own infrastructure around that? What would have been the strategic thought process in doing that JV, just so we can understand a little bit about the thought process?
So 5G is definitely an aspect of it. You're right about that. But the overwhelming aspect is that we believe consumers have a long-term appetite for connectivity services. And whether those connectivity services are on a fixed basis inside your home, or whether those connectivity services are mobile, on your devices, and more in other devices around your house, we believe that's a long-term need that can be best served at scale. Okay, and that the best way to provide those services is by having converged networks that, we have this vision of a network where you as a consumer can go from mobile services to fixed services without any sort of friction between them. More and more those are becoming reality, but we still have a long way to go, and a long areas of innovation, long gaps, and opportunities, to use your words initially, where we believe we could create real value. Now, we're a little bit different than other M&A driven companies, if you will, in that we're very comfortable being buyers or sellers. We believe in the fundamental value in the industry, and we believe that you can only get to that value when you're the number one or number two player in any given country. So if in any situation we don't feel we're in a position to become that number one, number two player, we're quite comfortable selling and joining our forces with somebody else, We're quite comfortable acquiring, and we're quite comfortable, doing joint ventures. We don't have like a religion that says it needs to be done, this way or that way. What we do have religion is that there is long-term value in these underlying communication services. There's long-term consumer appetite, that the industry is not yet mature, and that there's lots of room for innovation. So when you could kind of put those things together, if we find the right transaction to go after, we go after it.
So I'm going to be a bit provocative here, that when I think of a business like yourselves, you have to create shareholder value. Sometimes the best way to do that is through these collaborative partnerships, to be able to create confidence in the marketplace as well. Is it something to do with those dividends as well? Because you have to produce them annually, and you have to create them in some shape or form. And we know that, the average tenure of a CEO is, 3 to 5 years, and they sort of want to go in there, make their mark, and sort of come back out, so to speak, before they move on. So it's a reputational game as well.
I know you well enough to know you can be more provocative than that, but we still got time, okay? No, I mean, listen, a couple of comments on that, okay? First of all, absolutely, of course, results are very important, and shareholder value is very important. And every time that you have a transaction like this, you have the opportunity to identify and execute pretty significant synergies, right? And we speak about this publicly. I mean, in the case of the UK, we believe the synergies that are going to be unlocked are going to let us invest, multi-billion pounds over the next 5-10 years in the UK business. So it's absolutely a case where you can identify, through these combinations of business, you can identify opportunities where you both increase the amount of revenue that you have, and you hopefully decrease the cost basis. So you do generate more cash flow, you do generate more profits, and you reinvest a lot of that. The thing about network business, it is a long-term capital investment business. You cannot roll out a 5G network without a 5, 10, 15-year investment plan. You cannot roll out a fiber network without a 5, 10-year, investment plan. We are the number one provider of gigabit networks in the UK. We have, well over 10 million homes that are enabled for gigabit in the UK, and that doesn't happen without billions and billions of pounds of investment. So yeah, you have to find a way that you can generate these additional profits in order to really justify these long-term investment plans. We're not a startup that can just go and create funding by saying, we're going to penetrate 100,000 homes with fiber. Okay, I mean, I don't want to trivialize that, but almost anybody can do that, because there's so much capital available in the market. What people can't do, and what we believe we're uniquely positioned to do, is to do that at scale. Okay, to have 15, 20, 25 million homes that have service available in the UK, to have 20, 25, 30 million mobile subscribers that enjoy fantastic 5G services, right? And you can only invest at that level if you're going to get some payback out of that. I will say the other thing that we're different is we're in this business for long term. I mean, our CEO has been a CEO for over 30 years. I think in every one of our markets, the CEO has been there for a long, long time. I'm like believe it or not, I'm the new kid in the executive team, right? I mean, I've only been in the company 2.5 years, and literally I am the one with the youngest tenure. So we're here to stay. We're not a one-time show. We do invest in these markets in a pretty serious way, and I think we got a good track record of both delivering against the shareholder expectations, but also delivering against the expectations of the market and the consumers.
Okay, so I wasn't expecting this conversation. Me and Enrique, just for the record, weren't anticipating this conversation to go in this direction. So it is pretty free flow. And I have.
Well, you didn't tell me what we were going to talk about. I had no expectation.
Questions on the back of that, if I may.
Please.
Number one, let's talk about landlines. They're becoming more and more redundant, but I also wanted to talk about the race for 5G, because we know that there's been a lot of hearsay in the media about China, and I've done a lot of my own research around Huawei and how strategic they've been, their approach. How does the government, the relationship between states, start creating issues around how trade agreements are done, and obviously now China is being seen as the bad cop. Does this all have something to do with the ecosystem of some of this M&A activity?
First of all, telecommunications is seen all around the world as a critical service, right? And rightly so. We're both as consumers as well as businesses. We want to have high confidence that what we're doing is properly respecting our privacy and confidentiality and all that. And we are a global citizen as a company. We're a global citizen, and we spend a ton of energy making sure that we follow every government's regulation and guidance, whatever we operate. So, at the end of the day, this is actually not a big anxiety subject for me. I mean, in the case of Chinese technology, there's a lot of technology that has been developed in China, and we operate in a very friendly way, in a very cooperative way with lots of Chinese companies, and both in terms of Liberty Global today, as well as my own personal career. I mean, I've enjoyed doing business, with and in China for many, many years, and I hope that I will continue to do so. But we do that always in the context of the proper local regulations, right? So in the case of the UK, for example, you have the HRV, the high risk vendors policies being set by the UK government, and we do interact with the government as they're setting out those policies. They do it in a responsible way. They consult with ourselves and other people. Of course, like any other regulation, it's not like they're just going to ask everybody what they want and then come up with one happy answer. At some point in time, whatever answer they come up with is going to have some consequences, in some cases negative, on companies and that. But at the same time, it is an industry that is very, very, very sensitive. So while I may personally disagree with a particular ruling, I am very comfortable as a CTO that the governments do take into consideration ultimately what's important for the consumer. It is government. You cannot deny there are some politics involved, of course, but for the most part, I'm pretty comfortable in the direction, and I can assure you that we do our best to make sure we follow it. Now we make sure we follow it on a country by country basis, right? We operate in the UK, in Ireland, in Switzerland, in Slovakia, in Poland, in Netherlands, in Belgium, and in every single case, we try to fit into whatever the local regulations are, even though they're very fluid, right? It would be much better if regulations were at least regional, at least EU-wide. Of course, I don't even want to get into Brexit, but that's another topic of the day. And it would be even better if they were worldwide. Of course, it certainly would make my job easier. But it's within the context of what we operate. This is normal complexity. This is not something that is completely out of out of the normal.
Okay, you've been around and you've seen enough M&As and restructures happen. In your opinion, where does it, when you've got two major brands that have just done a joint venture, where does it often go wrong in that transformation or integration, should I say? What have you found to be the common failing?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question. Thank you. In my experience, so number one reason why a merger or an integration or an acquisition does not go well is when companies lose sight of what is ultimately the consumer objective. Okay, the business objective, which is the consumer in our case. Okay, we do about, it depends on the country, but anywhere from 15 to 30% of our business is B2B. So we provide connectivity services to other businesses. We provide security services, a number of things. But for the most part, our business is providing products and services to end consumers. And to the extent that I can keep our teams focused on that value, okay, why is it that when Virgin Media merges with O2 in the UK, what is going to create from additional value to the end consumer? If I can't focus the teams, in my particular case, if I can't focus the teams on that, then we have very little hope to actually make a success out of it, right? There's lots and lots of other complications, right? You have to go through synergy plans. You need to make sure that you're not just taking two large companies and putting them together and not taking that opportunity to innovate and to transform and to increase efficiency on everything we do. And so you use it as a great trigger to do lots of things that are good for the business, but you have to keep in mind the main reason you're doing this is ultimately to be a better, in our case, fixed mobile convergence champion. Okay, that is our number one goal as a company, and just about everything we do, we try to focus on that. So I think the number one way to fail on a merger or an acquisition is to let the complexities of that transaction make you forget what is it that you're doing in the first place. And like, I mean, we're in a consumer competitive business, right? I mean, it's so funny because we tend to be looked at by regulators as something that needs more attention, but I got to tell you, I mean, it's so competitive that even if regulators went away tomorrow, which they're not going to go, even if they were, the competition keeps you on your toes all the time, and it's going to make you fail or succeed, based on your ability to compete in the marketplace. So ultimately, that's got to be the focus.
So let's just talk a bit about the digital adoption and remote working. Obviously, it's put a huge demand, huge pressure on more critical networks like voice, data, connectivity. What infrastructure performance challenges does this cause for a telecommunication provider like yourself? And in order to keep everyone connected and seize the opportunity.
COVID crisis has put in from a stress on the networks is the increase in upload. Okay, already people were very familiar and going through a continuous explosion of downstream. So if I look at the networks, there's been two practical effects of COVID. Okay, number one, it used to be peak demand was always with prime time, 6, 7, 8 p.m. Mostly driven by streaming entertainment. Okay, now that peak is really much more distributed throughout the day. The peak itself has gone up by only about 15%, which might surprise you. The peak itself has not increased significantly, but that peak is now very broad, right? So if I look at, let's say, 10 a.m. or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, if I look at that downstream increase, that downstream increase is a lot more than 15%, but not enough to overcome the 6, 7, 8 p.m. We still consume most of our broadband 6, 7, 8 p.m. of the day. What's changed dramatically is on the upstream, right? We're doing these video calls. Now everybody's on video calls all the time. So our upstream has increased roughly 50%. So a very, very, very significant increase. Now, the other thing that's happened is, obviously there's more consumption of streaming, but the good news is that while we're all streaming more, the technology has also evolved significantly, right? I mean, it's amazing. Where I see you at fantastic quality, thousand miles away, and that's thanks to to the quality and the value of the technology underlying that, both on the broadband side as well as the software that rides on top of that. So the impact hasn't been as dramatic. Now there's a lower patience, if you will, for low quality, which is absolutely right. I mean, that's even though that's made a few days of my work a little bit tougher than they would have been otherwise, it's actually the right pressure, because they lead to us operators finding issues, being much more thorough, hopefully, and more disciplined about proactively going after issues, understanding that providing great broadband up to the gateway is not enough. You got to provide great Wi-Fi. So, for example, we're introducing new products and services that make Wi-Fi inside your home operate better. Not just happy to have fantastic, broadband right up to your gateway. So yeah, it has put more pressure on us, but as an industry, we've done quite well. And I mean, I don't mean to brag, but as a company, Liberty Global, I think when I look at every single one of the countries, we've done actually pretty well compared to some of our competitors that were in trouble. In the UK, I know you live in the UK. In the UK, as an example, I think initially in the first 3 months or so of COVID, we were the only operator continuing to do new installs. Okay, many of our competitors either completely stopped or decreased significantly the new installs, and they put all the energy onto their existing networks. We were pretty fortunate. We were able to increase our investment and take care of both existing customers as well as improving our coverage, which obviously is very, very good.
Many global businesses have seen disruptions to global supply chain, whether that's sourcing hardware components, whether it's having their engineering team out, sorting networking issues, some of which, may I say, are outsourced, and also call centers as well. How might telecommunication operating models change as a result of this?
Well, I'll start with your last part, which is call centers. I mean, call center has been an overnight transition. Okay, we significantly increase our capacity and onshored the great majority of our capacity, right? So you have, in the case of Virgin Media in the UK, but that's true in every one of our countries, you have a significant increase on the call center support that you provide in country compared to relying with partners outside the country. And that's good and bad, right? I mean, obviously, it puts a lot of pressure on cost. Providing a minute of call center support with an operator based in the UK is obviously more expensive than it might have been in other places in the world. But we compensate that by significant increase in quality. We compensate that by significant increase on the technology we're investing, so our consumers can deal with us digitally a lot more than they used to. Okay, and that's a challenge in this industry. This industry was born, in the old days where everything was a paper bill and everything was a phone call for technical support. And certainly we have evolved significantly, but we have a lot more room to grow and innovate when it comes to that. When it comes to other aspects, like for example, the field operations, we are blessed. I mean, we have a fantastic workforce. I got nothing but goodness, to say about our workforce in your case, Virgin Media, in other cases, in every one of our countries. We have relied pretty significantly on our workforce, and they've shown that they're to be relied upon, and that they deserve all the credit we give them, and even more. So we've been quite fortunate on that. But obviously, listen, telecommunications is a high touch business. Okay, if this phone call goes away right now, you are not going to be a happy customer with your broadband provider, right? If you're in the middle of an important video call on your mobile phone, you expect that to get through it, and you don't expect you're going to have to redial or redo this or read that. And so it's a high demand, high expectations, low tolerance business. And I think we've shown, we had a little bit of growing pains, but I think we've shown that our workforce have been able to step up. And the importance of technology here, I cannot overstate that importance, right? This is one of the first tangible uses of artificial intelligence, machine learning. We're using, more and more automation to make sure that we get ahead of problems, and we try to identify places where the network needs to get upgrades, it needs to get maintenance, it needs to be, new software needs to be rolled out. A customer may proactively get software rolled out to them because we know there's a problem, being developed, and more we're detecting those problems even ahead of the customer identifying it. I wish I could tell you that's 100% now today. Is far from that. We will certainly continue to make improvements on that. One thing about COVID is it has our NPS, the number one measurement of consumer satisfaction that we use, that we routinely evaluate. It has consistently gone up at least 7, 8, 9, 10 points in every single country that we operate. And that's fantastic, because that is a metric that we see immediately change. If we have an outage today, I know for sure the NPS is going to go down over the next few days, and I can see it dramatically, right? And I follow it, and we do something about it. And COVID has helped us increase NPS across the board.
Workforces have been working hard. They're doing the best they can with the tools and resources that they've got. And this isn't a reflection of the work of them. If you were looking inward, when we're talking about operating models and we're talking about inefficiencies. Coming from that sector and having years of experience, where do you see the inefficiencies?
So I'm going to talk about three things, okay? And I'll start with the one where I think we have the biggest gap. We need the most impact from our side, okay? Not externally, and that's the use of higher and higher intelligence, software intelligence in this case, to diagnose, to predict, and to address issues. These are complex networks. I mean, if you think about what it takes for me to see your happy pretty picture and you to get a picture from me right now, the complexity of everything that is happening between me and you today is pretty incredible, and we take it for granted. And I'm not trying to say, oh, it's a difficult job, so we're doing it perfectly. But that complexity can only be addressed in with use of higher and higher intelligence software. Okay, and the cloudification, if you will, of our infrastructure, the ability for us to have more and more distributed infrastructure, while it provides a lot of help and a lot of resilience, it increases also the complexity. And so I think the number one area where we're still going to be innovating for a long term is in increasing the value of intelligent software inside our network to more proactively identify and resolve issues in the networks. This industry operates, let's call it generally, on the 18, 19, 20% of capital investment as a percent of your revenue, right? So for every £1 billion of revenue that you see in the UK this year, there will be an investment of anywhere from 18 to 27%. It's about the range that you're going to see, or on a year by year and on a company by company basis. And of course, you need the scale to be able to make those investments. But we're a healthy company. We're obviously like anybody else. We wish we'd make more money, and we'll try to do that. But we place significant investments into the maintenance and the improvements of the network. So I would say that's the number one first area, looking inside, and making sure that we put enough emphasis on that. If I look at operating model, the blessing of this industry is that we have a large established consumer base, but that's also the curse, right? I cannot have the luxury, for example, of some of the streaming providers on entertainment, where they say there is zero phone call support. Okay, I mean, there's I'm sure you subscribe to some of them, and if you try to speak to an actual human, 15 minutes would be a miracle. I mean, it'll take you a few weeks before you have the opportunity to actually even try to speak to an actual human, right? Because they are businesses that were born in a digital era where they're okay to tell their consumers all your support is going to be digital, and exactly the same for billing, right? I mean, we still provide paper bills. We still have significant amount of overhead and complexity that comes with that in billing our customers. And again, we benefit from the fact that we have a large install base, but it's also that makes it very difficult to move, right? Whereas if you look at a modern streaming business, just to compare it, okay? You told me not to name names, but I was hoping I could name names, so get a little bit more controversial. But if I look at some of my, partners / competitors in the streaming business, they were born in 100% credit card, right? I mean, you have Netflix, Amazon Prime, and by the way, they're fantastic partners. I want to be very clear. They're an interesting mix between competitor and partner, because we do a lot of business together, and I take great pride that if you're watching Netflix on Virgin Media, you're going to have a better experience that if you're watching Netflix in other networks. And we work with them proactively to be able to do that. But for example, if you compare how billing is done for Netflix and how billing is done for Virgin Media, I mean, it's night and day, right? And again, it's a bit of both a blessing and a curse, the fact that we come from this inertia of large businesses.
Is there anything that you're looking at the moment?
It's interesting, because if you Google AI and robotics, AI and telecommunications, you're likely to come up with lots of examples about the call center. Okay, everybody seems to be very focused on call center, and yeah, call center is a lot of provides a lot of value with respect to end consumer service quality as well as a lower cost. Okay, but in my opinion, the number one place where we're going to see positive benefit, both the consumer and the business of AI, is actually going to be in the health of the network.
I totally agree with you. As a consumer, I think if I was able to pinpoint where the actual issue was, what's causing the issues around downloads, uploads, would help me understand.
No, it's not just education. That would be taking a easy road out for us. Okay, I think we need to do more in proactively, addressing those issues, even in many cases before the issues appear. I mean, we spend a lot of money today in maintenance of the network. Okay, and we have to decide, what street specifically is going to get maintenance this particular day. What are the priority and capital? And if we had more intelligence on the software that would let us do that in a more focused way, then that would be better for everybody. And we're starting to do it, but I think that's a huge opportunity for technology in our industry.
So I'm going to finish off with this last question, and that is around. I know we've spoken about some of the changes, trends, but if we can be a bit more targeted, what trends or collaboration do you anticipate we can expect to see in 2021?
Well, listen, for us, 2021 is going to be another interesting year. The way I'm managing my part of the business is assuming COVID is going to stay with us. Okay, I'm not saying I wish it stays with us. I'm not predicting it's going to stay with us, but I think the safest way to manage is just to assume that COVID is going to stay with us, and then optimize your business that way. And then hopefully we're going to see progress with vaccines and improved testing and tracing and all the stuff that comes with it, and that will lift, the environment for everybody. But I'm going into 2021 assuming the situation we're in is going to stick around for a while. And so what does that mean? It means that it puts more pressure in operational efficiency. It puts more pressure in making sure that our customers are satisfied and they have no reason to look to another subscriber. It puts more pressure in making sure that our networks are the best they can possibly be in every one of our operating markets. It puts more pressure to make sure that these transactions really lead to consumer benefit and not just to business benefit, right? So when I look at all that, I guarantee you there will be more partnerships in 21 than in 2020, because there's no company in the world today that can do it alone. Okay, I don't care who you are. I don't care what scale. I don't care what business you're in. If your ability to partner is not best in class, then your ability to compete is not going to be best in class. So I'm putting a ton of focus on that. The mid-size software technology companies are in a prime position to see a breakthrough. Okay, because what happens in this environment is the value of software. Not that it needed any attention, but it got even more attention. Okay, and every one of those right now is so funny because I was always the geek in the house, right? In terms of my executive colleagues, but you cannot be a successful executive today without being a bit of a tech executive. You cannot run any business without technology. Any business. I don't care what business you're in, you can't say, I'm just going to open the door and wait for consumers to come in, because that's not going to happen. It cannot happen. Okay. And so what's really important for us is to make sure that we use technology more and more to get this done.
Understood. Enrique, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation with you today. It'd be interesting to touch base with 2021. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe. Also, like, share, and comment. We're always interested to know what you're thinking, so please participate in the conversation by commenting below and let us know your thoughts and views. I'd also be interested to know what topics and questions you have in mind, and which business leaders would you like me to invite on board and have a conversation with. Enrique, just on that note, if anyone wanted to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way forward?
Probably through the comments here is the easiest way. And Kay, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for the opportunity for doing this.
Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. Guys, we'll see you on the next recording. Thanks. Bye-bye.